Hi, I'm Ross Palat. This is Moving to Climate Change Hours. First of all, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I'm broadcasting from, and where many of the people listening are gathered, is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes, and further acknowledge this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. Second, I would like to thank the organization that made this event possible: the City of Hamilton, Arts Hamilton, my publisher Noelle Allen with her wonderful press located in Hamilton, Woolsack and Wynne, the Canada Council for the Arts. I'd also like to personally thank the Banff Center for the Arts and St. Mary's College of California for the invaluable help I've received in developing this work. Okay, so the theme for this Arts Week presentation is me changing your mind about the climate crisis. My book, Moving to Climate Change Hours, found itself on a list of books that were described that way. Now, if you are a climate change denier, I'm probably not going to change your mind. And if you're like me, you think it's very complicated, nobody seems to be doing enough, and our politicians especially are not doing enough, probably not going to change your mind about that. But if you're looking to find out how complicated things are and how maybe we are all complicit, then hopefully this helps you along the path I'm on to climate activism, particularly through art. So, the format tonight, this evening is going to be a mix of my story of coming to eco-art, my poems, my videos. Much of the work will be directly related to the climate change discussion. Some I'm going to do because it's Hamilton material. Some I'm going to do just because I think it's fun. I'm going to say a bit of context, a bit of story, then I'm going to show a video, and then pair it up right after with a poem read live. And I'm going to repeat that 5 times. I've been interviewed about this material before, and I'm told much of the story I'm going to tell tonight. I've done readings from my book, I've posted and shown the videos. But this is the first time I've tried a long-form presentation where I'm combining all 3. I'm excited by that, and hope you enjoy the presentation and find it thought-provoking. So who am I? Well, that's me 40 years ago. I've lived in the Hamilton area most of the time for the last 50 years, since I moved here in grade 8. I went to Mac and got a chemical engineering and business degree, and that's me on my graduation day back in 1981. So here's something I think you might be interested in. No matter what anybody tells you, we are all talking about climate change in the 70s already. I took an air pollution course in 1979 where we discussed acid rain, the ozone hole, and the greenhouse effect, as it was called then. That's over 10 years before Bill McKibben's book, The End of Nature, came out, where he highlighted all 3 of those issues. And at the time I took that course, we discussed how solvable they all were. 2 of them got solved for the most part. The 3rd one, as we know, as a species, we have failed to act. I'm going to start with a video of a poem set back when I was in university. It's the first poem in my book, Moving to Climate Change Hours. First day. Gulf Oil Refinery, Clarkson, Ontario, 1979.
2 men blinded by hydrofluoric acid yesterday. The skin of one absorbed acid and it ate his bones. He died this morning. The gate's safety sign says 12 hours work since the last lost time. The safety trainer lectures. Hydrogen sulfide. At high concentrations, it causes olfactory paralysis. You can't smell it. Then you fall down unconscious, and next you die. If you see a body on the ground, you must check wind direction, move upwind, call for help. Imagine your best friend Bill on the ground, how it would feel to leave him. This is your first day. Wear work boots, learn work rules, get the paycheck. Go home to Shelley, pregnant with Neil, looking after little Heather. Do the right thing. Be a good boy. Come home safe 10,000 more times.
So I've paired that last poem, up with a poem from Hamilton set back around the same time period. I've been projecting the poem at the side there so you can follow my reading. Landscapes of the small hours. We walk lines in dark, Lake Ontario's irregular beat over us, moon yet or not yet full above the city. Pipelines or rail lines, no matter. Rusted hum under everything we do. A panic drive, the beat-up Ford Fairlane from Aberdeen to Fishery Yards. Beat locomotives hauling steel coil, farm implements, flour, fertilizer. No matter. The city sleeps while we travel and veer on loose railed ballast and creosote. The downstairs John, Phoenix, Rathskeller, Paddy Greens, Corktown, Rose and Thistle, Hannerhans. We quaff in them all, precisely like April snow, coarse, granular, damp, disappearing. So when I graduated, I went to work for Imperial Oil, obviously major fossil fuel producer. But I ended up something called a New Ventures group there, where we were actually looking at renewables, investing in big conservation projects in other companies, biomass and alcohol for fuels. So this is the early 80s. I started there in 81. So there was a lot of interest back then. And we were putting, in the group I was in, a lot of effort and money into that area, as were other oil companies at the time. But then The age of cheap crude came back and it all disappeared. Everything disappeared. And all that work stopped. And I'd say, as a society, we forgot all the lessons about conservation we learned in the late 70s. Things we knew in 1981, we just decided to forget. After that, I worked in refining business for most of the 30 years I worked there. Now, by the early 2000s, books like The Weather Makers, which somebody handed to me on a flight from Vancouver to Calgary back in the early 2000s, books like that started coming out talking about climate change and our failure at taking action, and how different ecosystems like mountaintops were already in serious distress. This was a big surprise to me. If you remember, back in 79, I'd taken a course where this was all going to get solved. And our leaders were doing things like the Kyoto Agreement in the late 90s, which we also thought and believed would get solved. But you can see, it didn't happen. So when those books started coming out, along with Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth in the mid-2000s, I, like many people, were getting very worried. And I was working for an industry that was actively promoting climate change denial. I was extremely conflicted. Okay, but here's where my thinking was by the time I stopped working there 7 years ago.
What I would say then. There's a huge Exxon refinery in Torrance, CA. The ESP on its catalytic cracker's ass exploded this summer. The plant came down hard. Grumbling Californians had to pay more for their gas. The electrostatic precipitator on that cat's ass turned out hard to repair. Exxon won't even talk to the EPA. Californians say they pay too much for their gas. Be down till at least next year, so they say. Hard to fix, they won't even talk to our EPA. Exxon's selling it to PBF, who told them to fix it first. Be down till at least next year, they reluctantly say. The place runs on California tar, no kidding, the worst. They're selling it to PBF, but it's Exxon's to fix first. There's nowhere else for that crude to go. That place runs on California tar, really the worst. It makes lots of pet coke, not so good as you know. There's nowhere else for that dirty crude to go. Hey, then why not leave it in the ground? Then pet coke doesn't get made, so you could wrap that place in a shroud. Hey, why not leave it in the ground? Imagine we all got together, shut in the oil, and they could wrap that place in a shroud. Our warming planet would thank us all. Imagine we all get together, shut in the oil. The plant stays down forever plus a day. There once was a refinery in Torrance, CA.
Poem for Vancouver. 9 cormorants skim English Bay's surface in a line stretching. 9 ocean-going freighters parked a mile out wait to be summoned past First Narrows to offload cargo, spread across English Bay's mouth. Wait not just in holds, but in tons of carbon to get there. The harbor seals spinning in the water, then under and gone. Captain Vancouver landed in 1792, not first, that was Jose Maria Neves a year before. Back before any Europeans, so good later it had to be clear-cut. Sitting on a bench by the Stanley Park tea house, beside a broken clam left by a crow, its flesh iridescent, open to air. The Salish met Vancouver's ship with gifts. Trade was good, they thought. Later came the guns. Crow in the tree above has a problem. Shits on the next bench, proclaiming his territory. Everything is about sex, my therapist told me. Even not sex is. Stone men, Inukshuk, stare out at a flat ocean. Later they will drown, and then not drown, and so on. 9 cormorants surfacing. So, as I said, I was thinking by the time I retire, keep it in the ground. But I hadn't found the courage to discuss that. That poem you just saw, the video poem about the Torrance Refinery, was written when I was taking my MFA at St. Mary's College of California after I retired. I was there because I met the world-renowned eco-poet and activist Brenda Hillman at a poetry conference in California. Her and her husband, the former poet laureate of the U.S., Bob Haas, had just been arrested for chaining themselves to the White House fence to protest Keystone XL at the behest of Bill McKibben. I explained how blocking that pipeline actually was creating a massive windfall profit for the Koch brothers' huge refinery in Minnesota that ran on Canadian oil whose price had dropped because of the blocking of the pipeline. Brenda and I continued our discussion after I came back to Hamilton, and that led to a sudden move to California for me to do my MFA. I found my voice to write poems like that one, but I was still nervous of people seeing that work when I wrote it. Now it's in a book, and that video is currently being shown as part of the International Video Poetry Festival in Athens, Greece. Here's another video I have very strong feelings about. Antique. Observe, slim moon, usual July stars, clean night breeze. They've put railway tracks right down the middle of this small town street, as if inviting the multitude to descend. A bar in the center of town called Musique Café. A band takes a break around then, a guitarist outside smoking. A couple at a table on the patio. They are 40-ish, met here tonight by accident. A friend leaves at 1 a.m. for her car, winks at them. Rotting fruit smell of oil. What emerges from feeding our addiction. 20 million pounds of steel and Bakken crude oil on fire. 47 people killed. 5 of them vaporized. The local hospital said no injuries got treated. They were all dead already. The young firefighter pulled his ex-girlfriend from wreckage, committed suicide 3.5 months later. Receive back your names. Enumerate your ages. You, how you left Musique Café, left your friend, your brothers, how you were singing. You, tell us how you prayed every matin at 4 a.m., your benedictions asked for, received. You, your little sister slept under the sky's black curve, your souls to keep,
Stars once reflecting, waters once unoiled, lake of place where the fishes are held.
Photo number 10. Mountains explain everything and are here once again. Their railway scars receding for a change as you walk, loudness, outrage, and fens. Here is where the elk took the wolf pack. Here is where you found Jesus, okay, not Jesus, at least climate change. This is where tracks cross the valley floor, built to last, they thought for a while. Lay carbon on our hands and subtler forms of dying. Walk faster, you tell yourself you won't notice, but eventually you catches up with you. Glaciers recede and snowpacks shorten in your lifetime. A life in your life, a shortening of breadth, of heaviness, lack of lackness. It adds up, it seems, to not much, but then mountains have always talked to mountains. The conversation when you go to bed, when you dream, when you wake, they close in on you today. This place is known and avoided by its native people. As Canadians, I think we all have strong feelings about Lac Mégantic, an unspeakable tragedy for a small town who had no fault in that accident. So many things went wrong for that to happen. One thing changes the right way and it doesn't happen at all. But for me, the underlying root cause of it all, as I said in the poem, is it happened to feed our addiction. The issue for me isn't pipelines or divesting stocks. It's the fact we are all burning this stuff. We have a society designed to do that, and somehow that has to stop. The next video is from a micro-protest I and Sarah Baran organized in the Bay Area, which is one of California's main refining areas. California producers, just a sec here. California producers run some of the heaviest oil, has a worse footprint than even Alberta. The protest involved Brenda Hillman and a group of students of hers. She called it Profits, P-R-O-P-H-E-T-S, not Profits, P-R-O-F-I-T-S. And we went and read eco poems in front of the refineries. We expected some negative pushback from workers, but many were interested and asked how they could help fight climate change. They were worried too. And that is the thing. Nobody knows what to do at the personal level, and our governments are not doing enough to make a difference. Here's this video is from one of those micro-protests I was talking about.
Bolted landscape. Standing at the crossroads, a place called Vista. The I-680, George Miller Jr. Memorial Bridge, southbound. The Congressman George Miller Bridge, northbound. And across the Carquinez Strait, oil refineries either end, Shell Martinez, Tesoro Martinez, Valero, Ne Exxon, Benicia. The rusted stretch of railroad bridge, the Union Pacific Railroad, Benicia Martinez Bridge, 1928, up the middle. A red-tailed hawk, Buteo jamsensis, conservation status of least concern, population increasing. The curve of concrete I-680 overpass behind and above me. Simple. Mountain, sky, water, hawk.
Poem for the tree squirrels of California. There are those who write about the legal status of eastern fox squirrels in California, an invasive squirrel. Allowable ways to kill them, pretty well anything. How they can be detected, apparently you just watch for them. I want to say those people are seriously misguided. Eastern fox squirrels do not exhibit sexual dimorphism, but the bad luck of the eastern fox squirrel is he is from away. Native gray squirrels are protected, and a license issued by the state of California is needed to kill one of the gray ones. But nothing is required to kill our friend eastern fox squirrel. Does eastern fox squirrel understand this? How precarious his life is compared to his gray brethren? An eastern fox squirrel the other day was planking cutely in the quad, Kayla taking his picture with her iPhone. She could have been instead dispatching him with a hammer, as allowed under California state law. It hardly seems fair, the value placed on being from here. Dark January days, rain soaking him like $100 bill. So, I mentioned the book is it's an eco-poetic work. And ecopoetics is work that draws connection between human activity and the natural world. So it often goes beyond traditional nature poetry and uses postmodern techniques in the making of the poems. The form is often integral to the commentary. I categorize my work as ecopoetic for most of it. It's interesting to me, though, in how the personal intersects with those themes as well. Last summer, I developed a video series consisting of 12 of the poems from the book, funded by the Canada Council, which you've been watching. I'm now creating an integrated work of all 12 pieces with short video prose pieces between them. The idea is the prose video is in conversation with the poem videos, kind of hybrid work to explore the intersection of personal human activity and nature. Here are two pieces which are a pair from that work in progress. Writing poems often deals with unconscious material being brought conscious, and I've tried to reflect that, particularly in this pair.
Dream. Some like to talk about dream homes, dream jobs, and dream trips. If my dream house was like my dreams, it would have an extra room I've never been in it, with an old man I don't know in a rocking chair staring at me. That home of my dreams also has a basement room where everything starts floating in the air when I enter it. It then spins unpleasantly. Where my dream job would be illogical and confusing, where I don't understand why things are happening. Exactly like the reality of where I work, now I think about it, but not something to wish for. And my dream trip would involve me driving a car from the back seat into oncoming traffic through a waterfall, which I may or may not have done recently. That mixing of dream and reality does sound more invigorating than the modern acquisitional dream tags like dream job or dream home. André Breton said in a manifesto of surrealism, "I believe in the future resolution of these two states, dream and reality, which are seemingly so contradictory, into a kind of absolute reality, a surreality, if one may so speak." One may so speak, Monsieur Breton. So perhaps we should practice disagreeing with the consensus reality. Things will get much more interesting as we recognize our dream experience as part of being totally awake. At a slough in Eugene, Sarah and I stand above Amazon Creek's oil-slow waters. Early evening shadows side by each. Companions motioning. Reflected voices, all blurred blood rushing towards blood silence and erasure. I understand nothing. Memories, longing, purposelessness. There once was a woman cliff edge at Bow Falls, wondering how I got there. Rapids far below, a story I hadn't ever heard. I didn't enjoy heights. Her sure-footedness convinced me a magpie once walked through her body and saved her. My foot slipped as twilight entered my body. I accept safety as desire only when there is nothing left, and everything is in relationship to failing. Each day brings its own light which cannot be owned. She may have felt that way too. But in that, it is all like yesterday. Cold stone, unclimbed mountains where language fails completely. Blueness all up under this chanting.
So 2 videos that time, no poem, read live. So at St. Mary's, I found my voice in eco-poetics and courage to share the work. But in an eco-writing class Brenda Hillman ran, I also discovered my prose voice in the area. Brenda had us writing prose and poetry around eco-topics on alternating days. So I decided to do a query to iPolitics around a piece on how the oil sands were doomed if the goals we signed up for in Paris actually got implemented. The editor there at the time, Doug Beasley, took it immediately. That led to over 6 pieces for iPolitics and the National Observer over the last 5 years. I found that giving people facts, though, often doesn't matter, especially given our politicians seem to operate post-fact. I'm still writing these pieces, but I'm not sure that giving people information is any more, or actually it's perhaps less valuable than a poem. So I'm going to show you one more video and then read you the last poem. So here we go.
Apple picking. 4. Cornering, coloring, falling, falls. An arthritic ache you will soon have. Crisp red into fall. An earlier darkness. Life subject to night more than day. Leaves coloring robins in those same woods. Gathering falls and brown leaf despite day. Cornering robins in those same woods. Gathering, coloring robins in those same woods. Gathering, coloring robins in those same woods. Gathering cold, the orchard, cornering, falling, falls.
Okay, so this poem is where the title of the book is taken from. Today we moved climate change hours. We left town for the cabin, deserved the break from full-on working, full-on drinkable lives. Fumes collecting and rising on their own specified terms. Nickelback on the radio and IHateMimes.com on the iPad. Yearning for the old knocking engine, what we used to call ping. The car drove the Sierras. NPR told us of COP21 in Paris, fixing the line on climate change morph. While we sang off our hearts, only we had tire chains and change for the jukebox. Damage was done, or would be at the appropriate time, as agreed to by all the parties per memorandum of understanding, assignable but non-binding. Beyond the car door and off-ramp, cars filling a void, fully awed us, requiring attention to literary, to emotional, to frequently held space. Long, slow turn. The steep grade, check your brakes first, they say, running out of road the problem. We have never reality from our political friends, smiling away. So thanks for attending. I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too. I have one final video I think I have time for, which I'm playing because it's pure Hamilton. Hope you enjoy the rest of Arts Week.
After the movie, my friend Michael and I crossed King Street West, dodging traffic, arguing about the movie. He says he believes success and happiness coincide. You can only have one if you have the other. I say, no, they don't have anything to do with each other. That's like saying shoes are necessary to own a coat. He says, but that is true. No point having a coat to go outside if you don't have shoes. There'll come a day you'll stay inside for good if you don't have both. I say, that sounds like you were happy before that day. He says, you might have thought you were happy, but then you realized you were unsuccessful. I say what you mean by happiness sounds more like a business arrangement. I say, happiness isn't conditional. He says it's conditional on what it takes to be happy. We're now standing in front of the Snooty Fox, the old Westdale Theatre's marquee blinking half on and mostly off across the street. And I hear my voice saying what I say to myself all the time. Most everyone's life is pretty well mediocre at best. And really, should anyone ask for more? Michael takes hold of my elbow. Yes, he says, they can and fucking well should. Inside, we order barking squirrels from our bartender, burly and bearded. The beer is dark, rich, burnt orange. I sip it like I've never seen beer before. Hey, I say. Didn't this conversation feel kind of like Marie Howe's poem after the movie? I was just thinking that, says Michael. Though this sure isn't New York City, and you aren't nearly as smart as the speaker in that poem. Funny, I say. I was just thinking how you aren't nearly as smart as her, Michael. We both sip our beers some more. What are you up to tomorrow? Says Michael. But what I think he is saying is, you are a failure. You should stay in your house forever. Then I think, does he know I want to remain bewildered? The noise level is rising. Laughter from somewhere, glasses clinking somewhere. Although we just got to the bar, we've both been here a very long time. I say, try not to become a man of success, said Einstein. Michael says, idleness is fatal only to the mediocre, said Camus. Our bartender jumps in. Stupidity lies in wanting to draw conclusions, said Flaubert. The three of us are quiet, thinking about failure and success, and thinking about nothing, and thinking about what jerks the others are. Outside, the marquee blinks no blinks. Red taillights blur on King Street West. Down the street I know, my perfectly squat house sits perfectly darkly quiet. At the end of that street is a trail into the woods where nocturnal beasts wander.